Bhaktivedanta Swami Ti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine. Nirvisesa Sunyavari Paschacharasata. Mukam Karati Vachalam Pangolangayate Girim. Yakapa Tamaham Vande. Siguru Dinatarinam. Panchakapatarubhyascha Kripasindhuvyavacha. Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadvaita Gadadhar Shivashari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, there's two ways we can continue. One way is that you can suggest some quality of Prabhupada or some example of Prabhupada that we can benefit from, or I can suggest. Usually we end up doing both, but I don't know if you've been thinking about this and you have anything on your mind. And I don't know if there's anything left from last week. No. Hmm. Hmm. One interesting example we can start with is looking at Prabhupada's anger, like when he became angry and why he became angry. And how I see that anger in two ways. One, well, three ways I see that anger. I'll give three examples of how we became angry, because, we talk a lot about controlling anger. We see that sometimes anger has to be used and controlling it would be wrong, because it's like someone who has a lot of money and says, I'll just give it away to people on the street and I'll become a devotee. So, and we'd say, no, you should use that money to print books, build temples, and so forth. So don't give away your anger. That can be used in service. So the three ways I saw Prabhupada become angry. Number one, when he heard Mayavad philosophy. Number two, when he heard or thought about atheism, particularly in relation to science, particularly in relation to people who have influence and are influencing the masses with atheism. And thirdly, when he wanted to make a point to his disciples, and the only way, or the most, maybe not the only way, but perhaps the most effective way would be to show anger so that they would understand the mistake they made was a big one, because sometimes you don't understand unless the person lets you know or they're upset. And maybe the fourth one, which was just similar to the first one, it's when devotees made offenses to the deities or improperly worshiped the deities, because that's Krishna. So Prabhupada would be angry. So you offend the deity, or you're a Mayavadi and you just deny the deity. And so, what I think we learn from this, as I said, is that anger has a place. And something would be wrong if these things didn't upset us. Like, Prabhu, don't get upset, it's okay. Well, they just, forgot to do an arti. Well, everybody forgets, you have to be forgiving. No, That's Krishna that you have offended. And if someone offends someone that's dear to us, it upsets us. And if it doesn't upset us, we would say, well, I guess that person's not dear to you because it didn't upset you. Right? Yeah. So this particular example is interesting because it shows that sometimes if we don't get upset, that's a defect. So why was Prabhupada upset about, we'll explain why he got upset about each of these four. Why was he upset about Mayavadis? Well, what if everyone in the world became Mayavad? Everyone in the world said, I'm God, and denied God's personal existence. And everyone in the world said, actually, God has no form. That form is temporary. It's just manifested to have you think of some form in the beginning of your meditation, but the perfection is you actually become that form. Where would the world go if everyone thought that way? What would happen to religion? And all the worship you do would be artificial. It's only you're worshiping a form which you believe is temporary. And the ultimate is impersonal, and you are that. So you're God, I'm God, we're all God. You know, it's very similar to atheism. And Prabhupada interestingly said atheism is better because there's no misconception about God. There isn't one. You know, like I may misunderstand so many things about your country, but if I just say your country doesn't exist, that's not as bad in the sense that I don't say anything negative. So that's how Prabhupada saw it. Bhaktisiddhanta once said something to the effect that the Mayavadis want to cut off the beautiful limbs of Govinda. They want to chop his head off his hands. You know, they want to make him a nothing. So if there's someone dear to you and someone else is saying that person is a nothing, that person has no head, you know, if I went up to you and said, hey, Stu, your mother has no head, that would anger you, unless you don't like your mother. But assuming you do, your mother has no arms or legs or head. She's just a big light. Yeah, if you love your mother, you would say, as we say in America, them is fighting words. Yeah, let's step outside. We'll resolve this outside. It would make you very upset because you love your mother, and that's offensive to your mother. So that's how Prabhupada felt when he heard Mayavads. He just became very angry, and he felt like destroying them philosophically and otherwise. That's just how he felt. Not that he would search out Mayavadis and destroy them physically. Let's walk around Vrindavan, we'll find all the Mayavadis. Let's beat them up. I'll get my black belt disciples and we'll beat them up. It wasn't like that, but he felt like that. Like, you should be beaten up for what you're saying. Like, if we can just get rid of you, that would be a great service to the world. So we can understand actually how he felt that way. And so that anger was a manifestation of his devotion. I think I may have told the story there. Prabhupada was at a program and first Prabhupada spoke and then a Mayavad spoke. And you know, Mayavadis will say you're not the body, your spirit, soul, Satchidananda, all that. So that's what he was saying. But then he began talking about God. And that's when everything went into Mayavad philosophy. And Prabhupada called over one of his disciples and said, start kirtan. In the middle of the lecture of this guy, start kirtan. So they did kirtan, you know, it was kind of a shock to the organizers, and a shock to the person speaking. But later Prabhupada said he was speaking okay in the beginning, but when he started speaking about Mayavad philosophy, I couldn't sit here and listen. I couldn't tolerate listening to it. I had to stop it. So you might think, well, from the public relations point of view, that's probably not a good thing to do, is start a kirtan in the middle of someone's lecture. But Prabhupada couldn't tolerate it out of his love for Krishna. Isn't that interesting? It's just like, I can't sit here and listen to this. So they're denying Krishna's position. It's driving me crazy. And Hare Krishna, stop this guy. Stop him before I strangle him. No, Prabhupada didn't say that. But it was, yeah, it was like someone vilifying, blaspheming someone that's very dear to you. Okay, so let's move to the scientists. We can see Prabhupada's anger towards Mayavadis and scientists in his purports. You can see it. It's one time he wrote a purport to smash the scientists, and there wasn't even anything in the verse about that even remotely related. And he asked Prabhupada, he said, I couldn't hold back. I couldn't stop myself, every opportunity. So in one lecture, I believe I was there, Srila Prabhupada said the scientists are the greatest enemies of modern civilization. The atheistic scientists, the ones who think that all problems in the world will be solved once we get everyone in the world to acknowledge there is no God, and your belief in God was just a crutch because we couldn't explain how the universe was created, maintained, and maintained. And now through science, we can explain it. They think they can explain it, but they can't. But they think they can. And so now that we can explain it, we can get rid of God. That was just a placeholder. You know, like when you're designing something, you have what's called a placeholder. It's not exact, you know, you're working on a book and you have a title for it. It's not going to be the title, but you have to call it something. It's a placeholder until you figure out what the title is, or you have a cover. You just make a little cover. That's just a placeholder. Gives us an idea. The book will be this size, these colors, but it's, yeah. So God is a placeholder. God was a placeholder because of ignorance. And now that we've evolved, 20th century, 21st century, we've evolved in our knowledge. And we understand that consciousness is just a byproduct of matter, what they call epiphenomena, when in the brain, you know, you become conscious, but it's all just material. Nothing is conscious except us, but we're apparently like everyone else. So they think they've solved the consciousness problem. They think they've solved the creation problem with evolution. And they've done a lot of good work, obviously. We have spaceships, airplanes, cars, modern medicine. We use science. So Prabhupada was never against that. Unless that science was just, you know, diverting people from spirituality. But his main argument was against atheism. And the problem that Prabhupada saw was that these scientists, because they're in the forefront of academia, they're respected. And therefore, if you go on any college campus, everyone believes in evolution. As I used to go to college campuses, and one campus was predominantly students were there were studying medicine. And so biology was, everybody had studied biology and everyone had studied evolution, and we'd argue all the time. And Bhaktivedanta Institute, the Siddhaputta, Truda Karma, a few others were there in San Diego, and we heard lectures from them every week on the views of science and comparing that to our philosophy, and how what is lacking in science and how we can explain that. So we were kind of cultured. So we would go out there with that knowledge, and unless we were someone as learned this Siddhartha, we had a PhD or something. It was difficult to reason with them because they would talk about theories and we didn't even understand. But what we learned from Siddhartha is that the basic thing we learned was they've never proved their theories. They're just theories. That's all they are. But as far as the public is concerned, because they're authorities, then people accept it as truth. Of course it's truth because Dr. So-and-so said it, right? So then Prabhupada said that these scientists are the greatest enemies of modern civilization because of their influence. If they had no influence, then it'd be like, how could they be enemies? Nobody would pay attention to them. But because of their position, they're being paid attention to. And they're influencing people. And Prabhupada saw that influence. And what was that influence? Atheism. There's no God. I can't explain how the universe was created. You couldn't explain it, therefore you put a God in there. That was like, oh, you put a God in there, that proves you don't know how the universe was created. That's how they think. Because you're too dumb, or we didn't have the scientific knowledge. Just throw God in there. That's your placeholder to explain everything. And that's your foolishness. So Prabhupada understood this, I think, way better than we did. And it angered him. And the reason it angered him is because he said and he saw that innocent people are being misled. So you get in a position, you have influence, you mislead innocent people and turn them away from God. If you turn them away from God, their human life there's no hope of making human life successful because we've turned you away from God. And the only way your life can be successful is we turn you towards God. So, and Prabhupada had come to turn everyone towards God, and these atheistic scientists were turning everyone away from God using physics and chemistry, biology, archaeology, and a bit of cheating and bluffing, or maybe a lot of cheating and bluffing, to put forward their theories. Now, we have some insider information from the BI, because the BI did a lot of interviews with people who discovered artifacts that were dated so far back, it completely tore apart their theory of evolution. And these professors were told, do not publish that information. If you do, you will be fired or worse. It's like, if you value your life, just don't publish it. Why? Because it contradicts everything that we're saying. And there was many cases like this. But Siddhartha and Karma wrote a book called Forbidden Archaeology. And then Karma subsequently wrote a condensed version. Or maybe they wrote a book, The Hidden History. Maybe the initial book was The Hidden History of Human Civilization, and the condensed version was Forbidden Archaeology. Forbidden means it's forbidden. These findings are forbidden to be used within their theory because it would throw it off. You want to hear something really interesting about this, and it was so frustrating for the scientists. That book was full of this information, of archaeological findings that did not support evolution. That's all the book was. It wasn't even an opinionated book. It was just like, here's the evidence, you can read it. The scientists, oh, they were so upset. And you know where they got that information? From scientific journals, like from 1800s, 1900s. They were just quoting their own scientists' own journals they were quoting. And so what I see from this is that their desire to kill God is so strong, they won't stop anywhere, even if their theories are turned upside down. Now, this is not all scientists. There are some agnostics and there's some theists. So I don't want to generalize because it's not all of them. But what we see with the hardcore atheists is they'll stop at nothing. And they could be defeated logically, philosophically. They'll never acknowledge it. So it's a bit, their position is a bit like Kangsa. Like you know how Kangsa is all he meditated on was how to kill Krishna. You know, he was meditating on Krishna, but it wasn't in bhakti. And you could say the scientists, all they're meditating on is how to kill Krishna, basically. And so, don't you think that would anger Prabhupada? Someone who's meditating on how to kill Krishna? Yeah, of course. And therefore he said, greatest enemies of modern civilization. You've got Shakti. The Indians come in my office and the lights go out. Wow. I didn't know they had so much power. Okay. We have 4. I can only remember 3. So the next one I can remember. Do we have 4? 4 instances of Prabhupada's anger? His anger towards disciples. I think his anger towards disciples had, this is just my observation, had 2 aspects. One, as I said, it was for the benefit of the disciple to help them understand they made a mistake. There's a story you might have heard. Prabhupada was walking in Mayapur and there was a room, the door was locked, but the fan was on. We did Mayavad philosophy, yeah. Tell me which one I missed. The fan was on. And Prabhupada got really upset. You're wasting Krishna's energy. So he was upset personally that Krishna's energy was being wasted. He was upset that this disciple did it. Offenses to deities, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So maybe this is category 5, that if Krishna's energy or Krishna's money was wasted, that upset Prabhupada. He said, we've, all these devotees, with their blood, sweat, and tears are collecting this money, don't waste it. So he didn't like wasting money. And he didn't like wasting Krishna's energy. There's a story, I was told that Prabhupada was on a walk through a neighborhood and someone had their hose running. It's just water dripping on it, and he went and turned it off. It's like, don't waste Krishna's resources. So that upset him, that we were wasting Krishna's resources. So that again, it was based on service or something that was improperly done in regards to service, specifically in this case, wasting. So Prabhupada was very, very heavy about leaving this fan on. So heavy that I have never left a fan on in a room and not been in it. And I rarely leave lights on. If you're ever around me, you'll see me turning lights off all the time. It's like, why? There's nobody in the room, turn the light on. So, Prabhupada made the point so strongly, so heavily. It's like, well, I was kind of raised that way anyway, so it's my nature. My father was extremely frugal, although he was also wealthy and frugal at the same time. So I was raised that way, but Prabhupada was also frugal. So I got it from Prabhupada, I got it from my father. And when I heard this story, it solidified everything. Because Prabhupada was so heavy. Why are you leaving the fan on? You're not in the room. What's wrong with you? Don't you, just on. I don't know. I don't know Prabhupada's tone of voice, but the impression I got was it was pretty heavy. And so, because it's heavy, it makes an impression. And if you say, Prabhu, you shouldn't leave the fan on. It's like, oh, whatever, I'll just come in back in 5 minutes. Not a big thing. What's a big thing? It's only like 50 cents for a whole day, a fan, you know. It just, you know, but when you're screamed at and told you're wasting Krishna's energy and don't you have any sense and you're just a spoiled Westerner, you waste things, you have no sense, you know, like that. It's like, oh, okay. So we have many stories of Prabhupada becoming angry once the point was made, once the devotees understood, then he was peaceful. So we could understand that. I mean, that wasn't all, in some cases, he was just angry, you know, because it was what they did was so upsetting to the preaching or to whatever. So it was a different kind of anger. But there definitely was an anger of instruction where it just, when the instruction was made, it stopped. And so um, Prabhupada would feel that in order for the devotees to understand, he had to become angry. And of course, you have to use anger with discretion because you could destroy somebody with your anger as well. And occasionally that happened and Prabhupada apologized. Did you know that? Occasionally a devotee couldn't take it and the devotee just went away. Like Prabhupada would be angry, he said, get out, I don't want to see you. And the devotee would just leave. And he thought, well, Prabhupada's rejecting me. And then there'd be a program in the evening and Prabhupada would say, where's so-and-so? Find him. He said, I think he left, Prabhupada, because you got so angry. Find him, bring him back. And sometimes Prabhupada would apologize. Um, and then with deities, I think it's obvious with deities. Krishna, you know, when Prabhupada installed the deities, he felt responsible. Like, Krishna, I'm bringing you here, and I'm putting you in the hands of my disciples. So it's like if you have a little child and you're letting your parents take care of them. You know, who's ultimately responsible? You are. And you tell your parents, don't feed him this. He's got to take a nap at this time, etc., etc. So it was that way with Prabhupada and the deities. You know, he asked Krishna to come. And you know that whole Bombay fiasco. If you read the story about Bombay, at some point you'll probably think, why is Prabhupada pushing this? They should just pull out. This is like, it just seems like an endless battle. But one of the reasons, amongst others, that Prabhupada pushed is that when his idea was the person who sowed the land was trying to get him off the land and trying to prove that they didn't have all the proper permissions so that he could keep the deposit and not have to sell the land for them. It was about a $50,000 deposit, which was more like, I don't know, $400,000 today. That was 50 years ago. And so Prabhupada thought, if you bring the deities on the land, no government, no department of the government is going to remove the deities. Once the deities are there, we're good. So Prabhupada brought the deities. So he, like, you could say, used the deities. And then he promised, he said, please excuse me, because they had just basically built a shed, a temporary structure. He said, please excuse me, but I promise you I'll build a temple. So when there was so much struggle, it's like Prabhupada, he couldn't back down on his promise. You know, he was fighting, fighting, fighting. So it was Prabhupada had a very personal relationship with the deities. And he had every deity that was installed, he took responsibility for. And when he was so happy when he saw the deities were taken care of nicely. He was so happy and so upset when they weren't. Naturally upset, should be upset. We should all be upset. Okay, that was a meditation. And uh, The abridged version is the history, and forbidden archaeology is. Okay. So, anyone have any suggestions or questions or comments? You were all stunned in ecstasy. I could see you're just like, amazing. I can't speak. There's another thing that's interesting, and I think this can help us a lot. It's especially more of a consciousness when you're older. And we saw with Prabhupada, I think, in Prabhupada establishing projects, especially Bombay, Vrindavan, Mayapur, I think he must have felt, if I don't establish it while I'm alive, there's no guarantee it's going to happen. So in India, these three projects, Prabhupada, as we said in the last class, was starting them without proper resources. And somehow or other, he was making it happen. And you can see by reading the history, if he didn't make it happen, who knows if it would have happened. Of course, now so many temples are being established in India. But that also could be because Prabhupada established Mumbai himself as an example. But Prabhupada, struggled to establish so many programs. And I think it was obvious he was thinking, how much time do I have left? So let's get this done. And if I don't do it, I'm not sure it'll happen. So now you're all younger, most of you, some of you, probably most of you. We're looking at some old faces out there and some young faces. So, but even if you're under 50, even if you're 50, you don't really think, you think average lifespan 75, 80, so I still have 30, 35 years. Could live longer. So when you're older, then you think, okay, well, whatever I get done in the next few years, if I don't get it done, who knows if I'll be around. So I think that was definitely there with Prabhupada. And then you might say, well, I'm younger, so how can I think about that? But this is how I think. Every one of us should do something to make our mark. Like I'll give you an example. And I wasn't even thinking like this when I did it. But if I look back at my devotional history, I could see I did some things that are still going on now. And I didn't even know that when I was doing it. But I look back at it and I think, oh, that was a good service. It's still happening. Like you establish, like right now at the VIHE, if you look at their ads for classes, I wrote the ads in 1990. They're practically the same right now. I'm reading and I go, I wrote that. It's like, it worked. It was good. It helped. They use it, or we established, you establish something at a temple, some program or some protocol. And because it's good, it's 30 years later, they're still doing it. That's nice. Or you develop some Sankirtan technique. 30 years later, that Sankirtan devotees still do it. So, even though we're not maybe old and on the verge of dying, I think we can all think that way. What can I do? And also, whatever you're doing, how will it continue after you go? Like if you establish something, who's gonna, you don't want it to die if it's a good program. Like who's gonna keep it going? Like Kamalochan, I think that would be a good psychology for you. To all the people you're teaching, you also, Manjuri. Which one of you is going to continue teaching? We should expand. I am teaching 8 or 10 of you. You could all teach 8 or 10. And so that way you live on. So I think that's important. Prabhupada established a GBC so they could manage, they could go forward. So whatever, think of things you could do to make your mark that could continue. Like I was once talking to Indra Swami, and he was telling me, write books. And I said, well, I'm more focused on doing courses. He goes, no, like write books. You need to write books. Because books, they stay. That's you've made a mark. Especially if the book is unique and no one has written anything about it. You've made your mark. So whatever it is, a song, a painting, a course, whatever. So of course we don't know how long we're going to live, but think about making your mark. What do how are you going to do that? Because that's what Prabhupada was doing. He was seeing opportunities and he was jumping on them. Without facility, he was jumping. We're going to make it happen. We have to make it happen. It's sometimes you'll see something that you feel is so important. You just think, I don't know how to make this happen. I don't know how to solve this problem, but we have to. We have to do it, whatever it might be, And so you somehow or other, you get inspired and you do it. And you make your mark. So that's what Prabhupada was doing. And we can do it in our own little way. Right? Yes, some little thing, little program that you started in 2025 and in 2050, it's still going on. Wow, that's amazing. Right? One painting you did that everyone in ISKCON puts in every publication, every book, sometimes it's like that. That one of Jasoda, baby Krishna, right? Yeah, that was I don't know about now, but that was on every calendar for 4,000 years in early days of ISKCON. It was just everywhere. So, whoever did the painting, obviously they felt oh, that was valuable, right? I did Brahma Samhita, although I didn't know it was going to be popular. But now that it's popular, then it's oh, that's good. Devotees appreciate it. It's kind of a classic. So you never know. I was able to get devotees to be able to do book distribution at some places in California. And then I felt we'd had a legal right to do it, but they would always kick us out. And then we got the legal rights and they're still doing it there. And I did that in 1990, I think, or 80, I don't remember. And they're still doing it. And I was thinking, yes, maybe that alone will get me back to Godhead. Maybe I get 5% credit for all the books distributed to those places. Right? Maybe I get 5% credit for everyone who got inspired by hearing Brahma Samhita. Maybe I get 5% credit. Everyone who got inspired by reading my book or hearing a class or whatever it is. The temple in San Diego, I got the temple. We originally leased it. I was the one. Maybe I get 5% mercy. I don't know. Maybe I got upgraded to 10. Stock market's going up. Who knows? But it's nice to look back at your life and see, I did this. People are still benefiting. I went to San Jose years ago and I told them, I helped start the first temple in San Jose. I don't know if I get credit for what's going on now because it had nothing to do with that. But just having done that, and in Krishna's eyes, Krishna's like, yeah, that was good. You did that. So that's something to think about. What can I establish of significance? Because that's definitely what Prabhupada was doing. He was establishing deities, temples, going all around the world every 3 days, moving, traveling, inspiring, really, really pushing. So you can think in your life what you can do. And we all have talents. You don't have to copy anybody else. What can I do which may have some value, particularly lasting value? Okay, we have some comments. Stu says, if Prabhupada was here today, what do you think he would be most angry about? Well, mistreatment of devotees, exploitation. He'd be angry about, I can't say that would be the only thing, but impurity of leaders. I'm not pointing out anybody or saying that anyone's impure, but leaders not setting a good example, especially spiritual masters. Like, if you can't set the example, why'd you take the position? You would be upset. He was upset about that when he was here, about leaders not following. And he said that's why the movement had problems, because not all the leaders were following properly. Any kind of lack of cooperation, he would be upset about. He always was upset about that. It gave him, maybe, I can't say, but it seems to me it was one of the most disturbing things for him, was devotees fighting, not being able to work together. And Prabhupada said that the preaching of Krishna consciousness is being held back by your fighting. So he's come to spread Krishna consciousness. His disciples are fighting. It turns the tide. We can't go forward because we're fighting. So it's quite contrary to his mission. So that upset him a lot. I think if he was here, he would push the finishing of Mayapur. I think if he were here, it would have already happened, because he could centralize the energy very easily. He could just tell everybody, until this temple is built, don't build any temples. Just finish this. But I'm not saying for sure he would say that, but he could. And if he did, it would have been finished. You know, sometimes when there was a project that was important, Prabhupada would ask a temple to donate money that they had for another project. He said, but Prabhupada, we have this money for this. Give it to this, it's more important. So, those are things we can't do now, because if we tried to do that, we couldn't get everyone to agree, but Prabhupada could. So I think he would have pushed that. Anything that was taking long, he always pushed. Why is it taking so long? Maybe for two reasons. One, he felt like if he didn't push, it would take forever. That's just the way things are, right? And number two, maybe he felt his disciples just weren't vigilant enough. And if he pushed, they would figure out how to do it. So he did that a lot. With the printing of 17 volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita, he did that. With the building of Vrindavan, maybe Juhu also, he did that. So it's kind of like a coach, going into a losing team. That's kind of what your question is. If the new coach came to coach this team, what would he do differently? So if Prabhupada came as the coach, obviously he could do a lot of things differently than we could do it, because he's the founder Acharya. But I think he would push certain things. I think he would push the BI, Bhaktivedanta Institute, because he pushed it. I mean, you can say what he would push based on what he pushed when he was here. Someone would say he pushed Varnashram. I think he would analyze when Varnashram, the need for it, and when it should be pushed. Maybe he might look at it and say, no, it's not a good time. We still need to do other things. It's difficult to say. Some people would say definitely he would push it. But I think that's questionable, looking at what's needed. He would always look at what's needed. As he always did, he would focus on devotee sadhana. Like he always reminded us, good sadhana, 16 rounds, 4 principles, like that, push that. So I definitely he would talk about that. Once he came to a temple and he sensed or he knew that devotees were not chanting their rounds, some. So he asked, who's not chanting their rounds? Maybe he would come and ask, sit down and ask, first thing, who's not chanting their rounds? In any case, he would be upset for any initiated devotee who's not chanting their rounds, or anyone living in the temple. He might also ask some devotees, some men, particularly sannyasis and brahmacharis, or maybe grihastas full-time, why your head's not shaved. That's something I think has been lost over the years. But at least amongst the renunciates, when their head wasn't shaved, it was like, why? I mean, sometimes because it's cold in winter, people grow their hair a little bit to stay warm. I don't have that option, so I use one of these. This was purchased in Ireland. It's quite warm. It's warmer than hair, I think. So the reason that was a concern, because he just saw it as like a sign. Not that he cared, if it was a 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch, that much. It was a sign. Why are you letting your hair grow? You're a monk. You should be shaved. So, yeah. These were things that he noticed. I don't know what he would say to the GBC, but he would have to analyze what they're doing. And I'm not a GBC, so it would be difficult for me to say if he would say anything. But if there were problems in the movement, naturally he would say, why haven't you solved this? Why did you allow this to happen? Why didn't you prevent it? Why did you allow it to go on once you knew what it was? So that's a difficult position. He would probably say that to any leader. Why have you not solved this problem? Why didn't you prevent this problem? Yeah. Interesting question. You could ask that to any leader, see what they say. The purity, that would be probably the main thing. The purity of the leaders, the following of the leaders, and the taking care of devotees well, especially by the leaders. Okay, Kamalochan says, once in Delhi, Pandal program, one American in the audience stood up, said, if this philosophy is accepted all over the world, there would be no anger and hatred. Prabhupada said, suddenly, what's wrong with anger? The person was dumbfounded. Then Prabhupada said, Krishna spoke the Gita to make Arjuna angry. There's a letter in which a devotee asked Prabhupada, what should I do with my anger? And Prabhupada said, oh, you have something you're not giving to Krishna? Yeah, you have something you can not use in the service of Krishna. So that's interesting meditation, because we say everything can be used in the service of Krishna. So that anger is not influenced by the mode of ignorance. And anger, which is not influenced by the mode of ignorance, you're in control of it. So you use it as needed. There's another aspect of anger which I've talked about in the past, which I think is important. Anger is an energy, right? So if anger is sattvic, although you won't find Krishna describing anger as sattvic. Okay, if anger is used in Krishna consciousness, then it's just an energy that inspires you to do something in Krishna's service. So, as we said, Prabhupada was angry with the scientists, but that inspired him to create Bhaktivedanta Institute. So the anger, because it's used in Krishna service, is not destructive. When it's not used in Krishna service, it's destructive. Krishna says, the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Oh, that was lust. But you can say anger also. Kama esha, krodha esha. Yeah, both. Rajagun samudbhava, mahapadmo. Greatly sinful, mahashana, greatly destructive. Vidyenam ihavarinam. It's a great enemy. But when used in Krishna service, it becomes an energy. Like I've said before, that I think almost every seminar I've developed, every workshop retreat, had its basis in anger. I was angry that devotees were not forgiving. I was angry with the pride I saw entering the hearts of devotees. I was angry with the shnish shnish ram ram shnik shnik ram ram. I was angry because of so many divorces and bad relationships. And just go down the list. That anger generated an inspiration to develop a course on marriage, on forgiveness, on japa, on humility. So although it sounds strange to say, there's anger inspiring every workshop I think I've ever developed. Because every workshop addresses a problem, and that problem, when allowed to fester, made me angry. And out of anger, I wanted to stop it. So that anger was used in a good way. You don't see me yelling and screaming, why are you all so proud? I can't take it. It wasn't like that. It was just more of a philosophical anger. This is bad. This is destructive. It upsets me to see devotees yielding to their anger, yielding to their pride, and so forth. Yeah. Thank you for that, Kamala. Hmm. So we have a topic, Prabhupada's love for his disciples. Yeah. And so if we want to address this topic now, then we want to relate that example to us. And so I think we'd have to expand this and say Prabhupada's love for devotees. One time Srimati Kirti, after a darshan, observed, oh, Prabhupada, everybody loves you. Prabhupada said, yes, because I love everybody. There are two aspects of Prabhupada's love for his disciple. One, I think, was more duty-bound. It's like my duty. So it was like a love. You got the love as Prabhupada, as a byproduct of Prabhupada's love for his duty. Like I'm your guru, so it's my duty to love you. So that's one aspect. Krishna loves everyone. I'm Krishna's representative. Therefore, I love everyone also, or I should love everyone. For us, it's I should. For pure devotees, I do, as Krishna loves everyone. And like you could see how merciful Prabhupada was in accepting unqualified people. And the reason is because that's what Nityananda Prabhu did. And so Prabhupada, as a representative of Nityananda, is representing Nityananda's mercy. So Prabhupada's love is an expansion of Nityananda Prabhu's love. right? So if you don't want to love somebody that Krishna loves, as they say in Australia, I guess I don't know if they say that. They say good on you. Maybe they say bad on you. Bad on you, mate. If you don't want to love, you don't want to love the people that Krishna loves. Bad on you, mate. That's another way of saying that's not good. So when we see a pure devotee, merciful, like Nityananda Prabhu with Jagai and Madhai, he's representing Mahaprabhu's love. He's representing Radha and Krishna's love. So the pure devotee represents the love of Krishna, which is love for everyone. And I love everyone as parts and parcels of Krishna, right? Yeah. Prabhupada saw his disciples as children. And he indicated that he loved us more than his own kids. Because we did what they wouldn't do. Then you could say, how could Prabhupada not love his disciples? I mean, look at what they did. How could he not love them? And perhaps what's difficult to understand is you might think, how could Prabhupada love all these people? He didn't even know them. Most of his disciples he never met personally. If there were 50 disciples in the room, he wouldn't know their name unless he was told. The few senior intimate, yeah, he would, but everyone else he wouldn't. How can you love everyone? You don't even know their name. Or he'd see someone, is he our disciple? He didn't even know always. If he was a disciple, if he was initiated, if he was part of the movement. And so for us, we would say, how could anybody love everybody doesn't even know them? Well, that's material thinking. So when you have no lust, anger, greed, envy, and so forth in your heart, you can love everybody. So I think Prabhupada's love for his disciples was a natural outpouring of his Krishna consciousness, in which, and you could see in Prabhupada's traveling extensively, you could see his love coming out because he was making so much sacrifice for his disciples. And it's just a natural outpouring of his love for Krishna. And there's some letters in which someone would ask a question and Prabhupada would say, I already answered the question. Or why are you asking this question? It's like common sense or whatever. And then he would say, but as your spiritual master, it's my duty to answer it. So although I've answered it in another level, although I've answered it in my books, although this is a common sense question, you could ask anybody, as your guru, you've asked me, I will answer it. It's my duty. So he definitely felt this obligation to deliver his disciples, as we said yesterday, to make them ready to meet Krishna, to prepare, to dress them up to meet Krishna. He took that really seriously. Now Krishna says, I samaham sarvabhuteshu name dveshosti na priha. I'm equal. I don't hate anybody. I don't love anybody. Pure devotee is a little different. He's kind of like, his first move is love. Krishna reciprocates with love. His first move is love. So Mahaprabhu's first move is love, not waiting for a reciprocation. Krishna's, yeah, tamam prapadyante. Yeah, I will reciprocate. Mahaprabhu's mood is, it doesn't even matter. I'll just give you love, especially Nityananda's mood. So I think we could say naturally Prabhupada would love his disciples because he was giving love to everybody. And there's a story which a devotee left. May have been a sannyasi who left and came back, and it was a sannyasi. And so when a sannyasi leaves, especially if they break principles, stop chanting, whatever, and then they come back, you could imagine there's a fear. Will Prabhupada accept me because what I did is really bad? I broke my sannyas vows and I engaged in sinful activity. So one devotee came back. He tells the story that he was thinking, I just didn't know what Prabhupada would say. And then he said, Prabhupada, will you accept me back? No, I think his question was, Prabhupada, did you reject me? And Prabhupada said, how can I reject you? How can I, something like this. How could I forget the service you've done to me? I can't reject you. So he's thinking, I've done many bad things. And Prabhupada's thinking, but you did service. How can I forget that service? Right? Yeah. I did a little study the other night or other morning. Can a guru reject a disciple? There's nothing in the Shastra for a guru rejecting the disciple. There's something about the disciple rejecting the guru if the guru is fallen. But like there's no grounds for rejecting a disciple. Disciple may reject the guru, so it's like, oh, well, he's not my disciple, she's not my disciple. Not that I've rejected, but they've rejected so. So Prabhupada would never reject anybody, no matter, I can't say, maybe they killed 1 million people, he might, but that never happened. So he'd accepted. Many fallen devotees would come back, and he'd accept them. How can I forget your service? So that shows the love. It's not like, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's not like legalistic. Well, you left and you've left for 3 years. Therefore, 1 year probation, 1 year pot washing, and then we can talk about resuming some more important service. It wasn't like that. It was relational. It was relationally oriented based on love and affection. I think that was clear with that story where Prabhupada let a former disciple cook for him who was not vegetarian anymore, just to bring him back. So in Prabhupada's dealing with his disciples, he was always thinking what would be best for the disciple. It wasn't so legalistic. It's like, how could you let him cook? How could you let this disciple come back? He was, engaged in taking drugs and illicit sex and whatever, for the last year. And now you're bringing him back and you're letting him travel with you and serve. From our legalistic point of view, and especially depending on the country you're raised in, because some countries are would be more inclined to say no. Probation for a year, then we'll let you wash pots for a year, and then it's not that Prabhupada wouldn't do that, but generally that wasn't his mood. It was more along, well, what would help that disciple. There are personal ways in which Prabhupada loved his disciples, and there are general ways. And the general ways are like translating his books. That was love for his disciples, because he had to get up in the morning. Like you love somebody and they come into the airport at 2 a.m. So you have to wake up at like 1:45. Get ready, splash water on your face, whatever. Wake up and drive to the airport at 1 a.m. because you love them. That's why you do it. If it's just someone you kind of know and they call you up and say, I'm coming at 1, say, you'll just say, can you get a taxi? Right? But if it's your mother, your father, your grandmother, grandfather, your son, your daughter, you don't say get a taxi unless you have a really bad relationship. Right? So I see, just, in one sense, it would have been way easier for Prabhupada not to translate all those books, because then he wouldn't have to get up in the morning. He'd just find time during the day, or he'd go to Hawaii for some retreat and then do it. But getting up at 12:01, that was an austerity for sure. And he did it for us, for you, for me. So that's love. And he traveled around the world. That's love. So that was like general love that he gave to all his disciples. He gave classes often when he was not well. Who are the deities for? Mainly for us. So it was not anxiety. Prabhupada had often chosen deities for temples. That was his love for his disciples, that he's bringing deities. Deities in Dallas, there was the Gurukul, first Gurukul. Prabhupada chose those deities. Deities in Mumbai. I believe they're at a Pandal program. Yeah. Okay. Stu says, I'm 63 and only just came to Krishna consciousness. When someone your age, comes to Krishna consciousness, my first question is like, what happened? Like, why? like you're, because I came like when I was 19, so I don't have experience of like living a whole life, and well, maybe you were spiritual your whole life. It wasn't the right time yet. But my other feeling is, wow, I don't think I could have made it that long, not being a devotee. Can't imagine. I sometimes think there is so little time to establish anything. Maybe I can contribute somehow, help someone else more established. Either way, but you don't know how much time you have. And sometimes it's true. It could take a decade to establish something or longer. But if what you establish is valuable, someone will continue it. That's also there. Because the value will be too great to let it go. Yeah. There's another thought, Stu, which is, if it's valuable, just do it. And don't worry about what happens. If one person can benefit from it, do it. So Prabhupada thought like that also. If we can make one pure devotee, our mission is successful. So sometimes you want to do a program and you think, there's not that many people. Why do it? And, sometimes you do a program and 3 people come and 1 person becomes Krishna conscious. So, and you do a program with 10,000 and nobody does. So that program with 3 people was, in a sense, in terms of bringing people to Krishna consciousness, externally, apparently, had greater success. But you were thinking, oh, maybe we should cancel. We only have 3 people confirmed. I don't want to do it. And you don't know. So you do it. And if we all do that, the world will become Krishna conscious. We'll all be doing programs for 3 people. And 1 out of 3 becomes Krishna conscious. So there'll be hundreds of people becoming Krishna conscious. Okay. Ayodhyaнаth, formerly Ajinkya Das, Ayodhyaнаth Das. Sometimes some devotees fight for ego and mistreat other devotees, and if we raise voice against that, my experience is that sometimes even senior devotees remain neutral about it, rather than changing it in the name of devotees should never get angry. Now I naturally feel anger towards these things, but what should I do in an amicable way? Because it feels that this mistreatment is sometimes justified in the name of fanatic nonviolence. It's a difficult question to answer because I don't know the specifics. And when I don't know the specifics, I have to imagine them. And so then I address what I imagine, but it may not be addressing exactly the situation that you're in. So the best I can do is give a general answer. One answer in a situation like this is just keep your wheel squeaking. The wheel that squeaks the loudest gets the oil. Just keep complaining. This is wrong. This is not right. This devotee is being abused. This is not, we have to stop this. Keep complaining. You know, leaders rather not have to deal with so many things. So if they think something's not a big problem, it's easier for them to just say, don't worry. Depends on the problem and how big it is. And you know, I mean, one way of addressing it is saying, you know, this is not our culture. And so we're deviating from our culture. It's not our philosophy. And that's why this is important, because then it's just going to continue and the next leader will do the same thing. And pretty soon we'll have, you know, abuse will be normalized. And future leaders will be abusive and they won't even know they are. So, you know, just keep screaming. I scream all the time. Sometimes I scream every 6 months because the last scream didn't seem to do anything. So maybe every 3 months I scream again and scream to different people. Sometimes you have to scream to different people because some people will be very sympathetic. Yeah, this is wrong. Let's do something. I'm going to talk to so-and-so. And that person you scream to has more influence than you and they can do something. So there's a reality that in any organization, whoever is the most influential person is the person everyone follows. So if the most influential person says, this is bad, this is abuse, we should stop it, everyone's going to say, this is bad, this is abuse, we should stop it, or vice versa. So you want to scream to the most influential, and you want to make good arguments. And tell him, if you say no, I'm going to keep screaming, because this has to stop. That's the best I can offer right now. I have screamed a lot about some things because I can't stop screaming because it's wrong and it should be removed from our movement. So I can't just like exist in the movement and watch it. It drives me crazy. So I'll scream and nothing happens and I'll forget about it or try, but then it comes up again. So I have to scream again, you know? Anyway, try that, see what happens. Hmm. Ah, yeah. I think if something's really bad, you can't not stop screaming. It's just, you will. In one way or another, to one ear or another, rephrased, reprogrammed, you'll do it. And that's what we have to do. You know, the movement evolves and temples evolve. So what is not important in a temple now may become important next year. So if you keep screaming, maybe in a year, it becomes important. It's possible. I've seen that also. I've seen sometimes I screamed about something and stopped screaming. 10 years later, the whole GBC is screaming about it. It's like, okay. It's not because of me. It's just because they all see it. So sometimes what you're screaming about inevitably gets dealt with because everybody eventually sees it and wants to do something, even though initially maybe it doesn't seem like they would. Stu says, I see so much Mayavadi philosophy infiltrating the world. It seems an overwhelming task. Where to start? Start with putting gulab jamans in their mouth. That helps. Put the holy name in their heart. You know, Prabhupada went somewhere. I'm not sure where it was. Maybe he was preaching to hippies or some country. And he said, these people can't understand. Just do kirtan and prasadam. Sometimes it's like that. It's like, it's Kali Yuga, brain's not working, malfunction. I don't believe, this. I don't believe that. It's like, well, what can I say? Here's a gulab jamun and take some prasadam. That could change everything. So Prabhupada has said things like that sometimes, like, okay, just, yeah, he said there was some place, he said, don't preach there, they can't understand. I think it was a bunch of radical, revolutionary hippies. Then one time there was some commotion because Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasa and he was preaching to a lot of university students, very revolutionary, and they didn't like that. They were complaining. So there was like arguments going on, and Prabhupada said, just do kirtan. It's like, this argument's going to go on forever. Yeah. Why would you want to be God if you could love God? That's the way we think. Tali says, sometimes I feel I try to stop the big fire with little drops. Sankirtan. To contribute to grow and increase the preaching. My neighborhood, because I'm shiny in my environment. Yeah, we're all like little jewels. And, we might think, what can I do? Well, you can do more than everybody else. Not that you're better or more intelligent or you have more ability, but you have the medicine, so you can give it. So don't ever think you can't do something. Hari Bhakti. Can we serve underprivileged poor people with understanding they're also part and parcel of Krishna? Serve under. Depends how advanced you are. Can we, they're part and parcel of Krishna, give them, yeah. Like Prabhupada, you know that story? I think someone was asking, like, why are you distributing prasadam to wealthy people? And Prabhupada said, they're also poor, spiritually. Yeah. They need it also. So he made the point that prasadam was not just for poor people, but it's spiritual. Poor people, less privileged, will be more open. Generally, they're more open. Scarlett says, may I humbly ask, how would Prabhupada react if a devotee get angry and scream at another devotee in front of others? Depends why they're screaming. If the devotee offended the deity, Prabhupada would probably also scream. But if devotees were being mistreated unnecessarily, he would be very upset and would stop it. Yeah, there are stories like that, where devotees were mistreated and Prabhupada stopped it. Chaitanya says, Radhika Raman Prabhu, 3-part seminar, The Allure of Mayavad Philosophy and How to Refute It. Addresses the topic in a beautiful way. Okay, Stu, that's your lecture. Make a note. Carolyn says, recently I've been told that becoming attached to our service is much more important than being attached to our Diksha Guru. Because as ISKCON history shows, you can always be disappointed. What is your view on this statement? I just heard something amazing. Oh my God, one of the most amazing things I've heard. It was a letter written in 1980 by a 32-year-old devotee who the GBC asked to take sannyas, who had a wife, similar age, and a 1-year-old child. And he felt it was Krishna's will that he take sannyas. And his letter to his wife was just, I am surrendered. I feel this is what Prabhupada wants. You know, in retrospect, we see it was not really what Prabhupada would have wanted. But at that point, it seemed to him that it was. And so the whole letter was about, I see this is Prabhupada willing me to do this. This is the most difficult thing, to give up what is most near and dear, my son, my wife, and like that. He's going on. He said, but this is what Krishna wants, and I want to do it. And I take this as Prabhupada's order to me. And when I read that letter, I was like, oh my God. It brought me back to the 80s. Like, we were actually pure devotees, you know. I don't know what happened since then, but then we were pure devotees, you know, because Prabhupada it's only been a few years since Prabhupada left. So we're really in this surrender mood, which is the mood Prabhupada had. And after I heard that letter, I was like, yeah, this is really the essence of Krishna consciousness. And then I heard a story. This is such a beautiful story. And if I forget to tell it during the humility seminar, someone remind me. I just heard it yesterday. So there's this devotee, this is Gaudiya Math time, Bhaktisiddhanta, and there's this devotee, and he's doing this amazing service. And everybody's like glorifying him, and he's getting glorified and everything like that, and he's got like big service. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says, they were in Mayapur. You know, he's like in a big position, honorable position, doing lots of service, respected, facilitated. And Bhaktisiddhanta says, I want you to go to Calcutta and wash pots. And he said, yes, Guru Maharaj, whatever you want me to do. And then Bhaktisiddhanta said, I want you to stay here and continue. I just wanted to see, I wanted to make sure that you're not getting bewildered by all these facilities. And so that was like the icing on the cake to the first story. That letter said, yeah, yes, Guru Maharaj, whatever you want. It's like, that's like the highest, you know? You can't, you know, I mean, that's what it's, I mean, it's hard for me to say that. I'm saying that, I'm thinking of Prabhupada. I'm not thinking of you and me. I'm thinking of Prabhupada. But like in Prabhupada's example, you know, if Prabhupada didn't have that mood, like how would he have come to America? He wouldn't, right? It's just like too many obstacles. So for me personally, I feel that all my strength comes from my desire to please Prabhupada. Now, the problem is that the person who said that probably thinks, well, these Diksha gurus, they're not that advanced, so, you know, like, why be surrendered to them? But it goes beyond that. There's also a principle. This person's your guru. So whether he's Mahabhagavad or not, still you follow that person. Can that person ever give you an instruction that maybe is not the best instruction for you? It's possible, but you could say, let's talk about it because I don't think that's the best thing for me. You can do that, especially with me, it's no problem. So, and most gurus will let you do that, maybe all. So after I heard that story, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. This is what it means to be a disciple. Yes, Guru Maharaj, whatever you say. Well, okay, you can stay here. You passed the test. Why ask me to wash pots in Calcutta? You know what I'm doing? There's a story like that with Tamal Krishna when Prabhupada wanted him to go to China, and he was arguing like anything. Prabhupada didn't like it. He said, then you stay in Mayapur, just chant. Don't do anything else. You know. So I don't think we can undermine the importance of that. Even your guru is not a Mahabhagavat, but just that principle. It's very powerful and necessary. And of course, it can be, discussed with your guru. What do you think, Carolyn? What's your idea? Yeah, many gurus fell down. You could be, that's, of course. You ever heard that saying? Like if you've had a relationship and you've been burned out, then you'll say something like, that's it, I'm never going to be in a relationship, a romantic relationship again. It's too painful. And there's some actress or someone said, better to have loved, something like better to have loved and failed than never to have loved at all. So, there are some gurus who have left Krishna consciousness. But most devotees you talk to about that, they'll say, it was unfortunate and I was affected, but I got so much from them. I can't deny what I got from them when they were Krishna conscious, right? So it wasn't a loss. And most of those gurus were 27, 26, 29 when they became gurus. So it's a little different now. Anyway, you can become attached to your service also. But someone could take away your service. Now what are you going to do? It's the world we live in, And maybe your guru won't fall down, but he'll leave his body, It's equally as difficult. Maybe more difficult. Because if he falls down, at least you could talk to him. If you want. Hare Krishna. One of my godbrothers said, what do you think your duty is as a guru? And I listed like 8 things. And I said, anything to add to this list? He said, the list is good. I would add one thing. Take care of your own sadhana, your own. So we as gurus, we see our service to our disciples is to take care of our Krishna consciousness. I just heard a lecture this morning, Prabhupada said, unless you're Krishna conscious inside and out, you can't spread Krishna consciousness because you have to exemplify it. So we take that seriously. What you're doing speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. You've heard that statement before? So your example is so powerful that what you say it's not that important. Not as important. So we take it seriously. Some devotees ask me, how do you remain determined in Krishna consciousness? And I say, what else am I going to do? Who else am I going to surrender to? I'm initiated by Prabhupada, like, doesn't get any better than that. I have like devotional service 24/7. It's like, what else am I going to do? Go surfing, So that's how we feel. There is nothing, Plus, a lot of that fall down was from the sannyas ashram, not grihastha. You know why grihasthas can't fall down or don't fall down? You want to hear Prabhupada's answer? How can you fall? You're already fallen. So, when we fall, it's only like an inch. So, nobody notices and it doesn't hurt. But There is something to, there is a difference between a 30-year-old sannyasi guru and a 70-year-old sannyasi guru, especially if that sannyasi guru has been sannyas since he's like 40, They're not going anywhere. The ones who are going somewhere, most of them already went. So nowadays your betting odds are pretty high. Whoever you choose is going to make it. Especially if they're already old. If they're old and not married, the odds go up, I think, a little bit. Not necessarily, but externally it looks like that. Yeah. So that's interesting. Jamie says, I wonder if Prabhupada would be pleased with me or if it would push me harder. Both. I always have a doubt that I'm not doing enough. You're not. Or if it's my false ego comparing me to senior devotees. Probably both. So, Jamie, every devotee thinks I'm not doing enough. Even the ones who have 10 zillion disciples, they'll still think I'm not doing enough because there's one person who's not a devotee and he's not my disciple. I've got, what's the population of the world? 8,330,000,000 or something. So I've got 8,329 and 999,000,000 disciples. That means there's one who's not my disciple. I'm not doing enough. You'll naturally feel that. That's devotional feeling. Prabhupada is, one thing I think is important to understand, Prabhupada's easy to please. He's not difficult to please. We think, well, nobody's pleased with me. Everything I do, nobody appreciates. But Prabhupada's not like that. He's very easy to please. So he's pleased with your efforts. Would he push you harder? Yeah, because we can all do more. That's for sure. How to scream without affecting our Krishna consciousness? Because you're doing it out of compassion, because you're concerned about the devotees that are being not being treated well. So your screaming is out of love. So your screaming will inspire you. It won't hurt you. I've heard this theory so many times that we shouldn't be too attached to our guru as gurus fall down. It always breaks my heart. I understand it's coming from devotees who have seen their zonal joys fall down. That's Carolyn's comment, right? But I get so sad and angry. It undermines disciples' faith. Yeah. So, Carolyn, what if when you get initiated, I say, don't become too attached to your guru because it could fall down? That would be weird, right? Everyone in the temple would think that's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. And how would you feel? You're like, well, maybe I should find another guru, right? Could we fall down? Anybody could fall down at any time. That's for sure. But those who take their service seriously and their service to their disciples will take care of themselves so they can show up in the best possible way. Right? Like, I believe, for me, probably true for everybody, but so much of what I can offer you are my own realizations. So if I don't take care of myself, if I don't read sufficiently, chant sufficiently, I won't have any realization. Right? So I'll give a class and you'll all fall asleep. And everything I'll say, you'll say, big deal. I know that. The new bhaktas know that. They're like, there's no realization, there's no life. So preachers have realization. That's what they share. And that's what makes their speaking powerful. And their realization comes from their practice. Right? Fabiana asks, can someone take shelter of a guru or ask it if one is not sure if someday they would want first initiation? Yeah. Because this is a confusion. I think some gurus want people who aspire for them to follow certain standards before they'll even allow them to aspire. But if you want a guru you want that person as a Siksha guru, that will help you. And I wouldn't worry about being qualified or not for initiation, because one of the best ways to become qualified, if you ever would, is to have somebody who can guide you. And your relationship with the Siksha guru is very similar, if not completely the same as relationship with the Diksha guru. It depends on you. Tali is saying, Navina Narada and Vaisheshika became devotees when they were 15 years old. So that's a good, you ask your guru, how old were you when you became devotee? And Stu says 63, and you're like, oh, I forget you. Well, I was 15 when okay, I want to choose you. You're solid. Of course, that's not true, but it could seem that way. Hari Bhakti says, can we have a few classes of Guru Tattva? We do, it's all recorded. You can listen to them. And then maybe we could later. Fabiana, before I was initiating, I asked some of my godbrothers who were gurus, do you think it's better that someone, like who's better situated? Someone who takes initiation but doesn't follow perfectly, or someone who's not initiated who's following perfectly? That's a Mahatma Das question. That's a stump the guru question. Because it seems like the answer is, well, obviously, if they're chanting 16 rounds, they're better. All the gurus said it was better they were initiated because they have that connection with me and I can help them. And that connection was better. So I'm not saying that you need to be initiated. I'm saying it in terms of the connection. When you have a connection with the guru, it helps you. And I'll explain the reason why. This is really important. And this is part of Guru Tattva. We have the Vyasa-san here. This is part of Guru Tattva. This is what I see personally. Faith is something very precious, because faith it's difficult to develop, right? To have faith in somebody. It doesn't come easily, right? And when you have faith in somebody, then you can hear and act upon what they say. Whereas if you don't have faith, you hear, but you may not be able to act, or it's difficult to act. So someone says, you should do this, and you're like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I can trust you, that you understand me, or I don't know if I believe you, or whatever. I'll think about it, or I don't think I'm going to do it. When you have faith, it's like, yes, I'll do it. And you're empowered to do it because of your faith. So Fabiana, if you find someone who could be a Siksha guru and you feel like, I'm not really qualified to be initiated, but you have faith in that person, that's going to help you tremendously, because you'll be able to hear from them. And you'll be able much more easily able to do what they ask you. Than if it's just, well, I just hear classes and, but it's a personal relationship, so it helps. And Prabhupada also said, the beauty of having guru is that you have affection for that person. And so your impetus to follow also not only from the faith, but it comes from the affection. Well, so many times it's like, you may not want to do something, but it's like, well, my guru wants me to do it, so I'll do it. Like, how many times would it have been easier for you to not chant 16 rounds? You're sick, you're tired, you're busy, it's late at night, you're falling asleep, schnick, schnick, ram, ram, you can't keep your eyes open. And you're like, why am I doing this? Because I promised my guru. Like, there's no other reason. Like, there's no, it's like, well, it's good for me, I should do it. Yeah, but who cares? We don't care enough about ourselves. I'll do it the next day or the next year or the next life or something. Yeah. So a lot of times it's like Fabiana, you can have a 6-year guru and you could make a vow to the 6-year guru. I'll chant 4 rounds a day, 8 rounds a day, 12, 16, 1, 10,000, whatever you want to do. You can make a vow to your 6-year guru. And that'll really help you, right? I have devotees make vows to me who are not initiated, who do not chant 16 rounds. And so they make a vow to chant whatever. And they all think that's a good idea. My godbrother gave me that idea. They like that. Okay, I vow to chant 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever. I'm not ready for 16. Then you can always upgrade your vow. And when you upgraded it to 16 and 4 principles, then you're like, okay, you made it. You could get initiated. Chaitanya quotes Bhagavatam. I was very much attached to those sages. I was gentle in behavior. All my sins were eradicated. In my heart, I had strong faith in them. I had subjected, yeah. So that's important. Hare Krishna. Gauranga, oh yeah. Water. Stew, I'm drinking some water. Well, it depends what part of England you're from. Wa'a. It's either water or wa'a. And in Australia, it's wala. I'm drinking some wala. And in some parts of America, it's water. Our T's or D's, water. So Stu or Jamie, when you come to America and you go in somewhere and you ask for water, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. Just ask for water. Like, I have some water. I'm like, what? I have some water. What? Then you remember, oh, I have some water. Oh yeah, sure. The corruption of the English language. Okay. Yeah. Hey, gang's all here. Could you please once again say, if I understood well, is it better to one day be initiated even if I might be doubting one day I cannot follow what I promised? Still better than to try to follow 16.4 and not be initiated. Yeah, I think so. Well, in my book, soon to be released, about my association with Prabhupada, I talk about my initiation and I pose a question. I was 19. How could I know that for the rest of my life? Like, how do you know? It's the question I posed. How do you know when you take your initiation vows, you'll be able to do it your whole life? Technically speaking, you don't, unless you like are a mystic and can see the future. You just know you want to. And you take a vow because you want to. And like I said, that vow keeps you going because you know once you take a vow, there are going to be days when you'd rather do something else, or you're like way backlogged. And you could use those 2 hours that you take for japa to do that, to finish that thing, right? But speak if you're working, you're in school, you got 14 kids and all that, you could use those 2 hours for a lot of things, right? But because you've taken that vow, you don't. But you can take that vow before, also, if you want. Test. Let's do a test vow. Let's try this vow for 6 months. So you could take a vow to me that this is how many rounds I want to chant. If you want, you can do that. It's open. I offer that facility at no extra cost. It's one of the byproducts for joining the Mahatma Club. You get that also. So anybody can do that if they want. So that was the conclusion of all the gurus, that when there's the connection in the vow, it's good. And I think also for many devotees who didn't keep their vow, it's there, they know they made it. And if they're still devotees, they want to get back to it. And then they spend time in India chanting like 32 rounds a day, make up for all the days they missed, So, you know, someone would say, well, I'm not ready. And that's understandable. But the question is, will you ever be ready? And the answer may be, I don't know. Well, so that's not good either. Do you want to do it? I think that's the real thing. If your heart's into it and you want to do it, that's most of being ready. Because Prabhupada said, your determination to follow the vows, the 4 principles and 16 rounds is your real initiation. My touch is just a formality. So it's your determination. So it's like the guru can't really initiate you. You initiate yourself and he just goes, what does he say when he gives his blessings? Ashubhat. He gives his blessings. Is that it? Ashubhat. You say, I want to do this. This is my determination. So be it. It's more like that. Like I can't make you do it. I can inspire you, but ultimately I can't make you. You have to make yourself. So if you feel that this is what I want to do, there's nothing else in my life I want to do, then yeah, go for it. Go, girl. Hare Krishna. Is it a really bad thing to break vows? Like Yamaduta is coming for me? Bad or normal or bad? Well, if you make a vow to your spiritual master and you break it, it's harmful for the relationship. That's a problem. It's not like the Yamadutas are going to come for you, but as long as you're wearing your neck beads, they'll go away. Oh, good. So I can break all the principles. The Yamadutas come, I just go. See you later. Pick me out. I got tilak neck beads. Yeah. So you can get, a tattoo of tilak and always have extra neck beads. One set breaks, the other. You're good. But we're not trying to buck the system. This is how I'm going to go back to God, to neck beads and tilak. Get permanent cement on my forehead. It's there 24/7. I'm good. It's not like that. Yeah. So the holy name is what will purify you, Fabiana. And if you follow the principles, your chanting of the holy name will be more pure. So if you're not following all those principles, you're still chanting to become purified, but it's going to be less effective. Like if you want to be healthy, don't eat late at night. If you eat late at night, are you going to die? No. But your health will be better if you eat earlier, like 5 or 6. You eat a light meal, 5 or 6, you'll be healthier. It's not like you're going to get cancer and a heart attack if you eat, late at night. But it's healthier to eat earlier. So it's something like that, like your chanting will be better if you follow the principles. But the chanting will help you follow the principles, so they work together. So that's where those principles come. Now, there was a time in human history where these 4 principles, like everybody followed, Maybe the Shudras didn't, but everyone else. That was kind of normal. So I think one of the problems is because Kali Yuga is so progressed, what was previously normal seems like, wow, 4 principles. Oh my God, that's like amazing. How could anybody do that? And they go, hello, everybody used to do it. That was just normal. Like, in any kind of culture, Brahminical culture, they're all vegetarian. Sex was never outside of marriage. And nobody took intoxication because that was all tamasic, just weigh your brain down. So it's good to think of it like that also. But I wouldn't worry about it so much because by chanting, you'll be able to follow more easily. And the more you follow, the better you're chanting. So We were told that Prabhupada said, someone asked him about, having sex in marriage. He said that, well, it's not sinful, you're married, but it's not like going to help you. It's not, it's like, the more you can control yourself, the better. That will support you. But, this culture, like, it's just different. But Prabhupada gave that principle. He wanted us to control ourselves well. Hare Krishna. So try your best. Okay, we've gone overtime. No extra charge for overtime. Hare Krishna. The Prabhupada ki jai, go Premanandi. Hare Hare. Gauranga. Now I have to tell my last story. I think I told it last time. When I became a devotee, I felt like I conquered the universe. You know why, Fabiana? I felt like I conquered the universe because I became celibate. And I was like, these women are not going to control me anymore. It's like, it's over. I'm not going to look at them. I'm not going to worry about them. I'm free. And I felt so free that was out of my life. And I knew I couldn't do it without the devotee's mercy. But when I did it, I was like, yes, I'm powerful. So when you control yourself, you get this feeling of power. Like I, Fabiana Novo Rocha, can decide really what I want to do. I don't have to allow my conditioning or Maya or my culture or whatever decide. I could decide what I want to do. So I decided this is what I want to do against all the influence that was going on around me, because the influence around me was heavily sex and drugs where I lived. Heavily. Everywhere it was pervading. And I decided I don't want that. And by the power of the holy name, I could do it. It was amazing. So you can decide. The thing is, you want to decide what you want to do. You don't want to decide what you feel like doing. Because what you feel like doing and what you decide to do, well, it sounds like are different. Like you know what's best. So to be in the position where you know what's best and you can decide and do that, that's powerful. And you'll feel like amazing. I am doing what I know is best. Because every time you do what you just feel like, but you know it's not best, you feel like a failure. I failed. And now there's another thing. It's like a heavy thing to make a vow, because a vow is it's like a promise that if I don't follow, then it's like I feel bad, right? But vows are good because if you follow them, it builds integrity with yourself. It means I can make a determination and commit to something and do it. But if you make a vow and you don't do it, then you can't take yourself seriously. And you're like, well, I don't make vows because I never followed them. New Year's resolutions, I don't make them anymore because I never followed them. It's like a life of, you've defeated yourself. Whereas if you make a vow and follow it, it builds a lot of trust in yourself that I can commit to something and do it. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay. As I said, class is over. I'll say it again. Class is over. Hare Krishna.